my fellow coglings, it's Augustine. So come a bit closer, listen to what I gotta say, right? Look, I really didn't want this to be the first video I posted on this channel. I want to make art and theory and analysis videos and just generally have fun. But recently I came across this video on Knights of Guinevere by AJTheWildWolf, and let's just say I had a visceral reaction to it. Look, full disclosure, I'm not going to do that frankly pretentious thing where I pretend I'm coming from a place of facts and reason. I'm very much biased coming into this. Anyone who knows me personally knows I am very much a highly enthusiastic Knights of Guinevere stan who wishes they were rich enough to buy all the merch with Gwen's face on it. Can you tell she's my favorite character, by the way? So yeah, I fully acknowledge that this video isn't 100% objective. I can't help but at least feel a little emotionally engaged about a pilot that I've watched at least 13 times over now. At the same time, I think it's that same devoted engagement to the source material that might actually give me better insight about the responses I'm going to give in this video as opposed to a more casual fan. It should also be noted that I do get kinda mean in this video, not like personal attacks or anything, more so poking fun at the things said in the review itself. But for the most part, it's in the name of entertainment and humor, and obviously there are certain lines that shouldn't be crossed, so don't go out there spewing hate or harassing anyone on behalf of this video, okay? I don't need that on my conscience, and frankly, you don't need that on your conscience either. Besides, I really don't know AJ outside of this one Knights of Guinevere video, and honestly the only thing she's really guilty of is having a bad take, like whoop-de-doo, who hasn't, right? Who knows, maybe this whole video is a bad take. How meta! Really, I think of this as more of a shame than anything, because while she's totally within her right to continue hating Knights of Guinevere, I do genuinely believe this is one of those moments where someone kind of ruined something for themselves just because they had a really bad understanding of that thing. And I think maybe if she just gave the pilot a closer look, she might actually end up enjoying it a lot more than she initially had. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the video. So her review actually starts with her complimenting the show's visuals, noting how beautiful the background art and character designs are.
It was very interesting stylistically, and it gets you interested immediately. The character designs so far are all very distinctive and unique, and they all move pretty alright despite the detail. I did notice a few times where they were a little stiff, but that's being very nitpicky and also to be expected. The more detailed your animation style is, the more you have to sacrifice in terms of movement. That's why anime is often composed of mostly still images where only the characters' mouths move, whereas in Western animation, where the characters are usually a lot more simple and move around a lot more to compensate for that. It's a game of trade-offs, and I think this was an excellent example of detailed animation done really well. The premise is interesting enough, and I'd love to see more of it explored. The monster design is really quite excellent. That sun guy, so cool.
Which, yeah, I agree. The pilot is kind of a visual marvel, especially for an indie project. However, her positive comments here makes some of what she has to say later on in the video a bit questionable. Put a pin in that, we'll come back to that. Because it does not take long for the review to, nosedive into the pits of hell just a bit.
We're following two morally bankrupt, insufferable, annoying, tedious. We see them again as adults. What happens? Can you guess? So they go up to a black-owned business.
Wait, black-owned business? Where did that come from? Wait, brown chick!
Her name is...
Damn, forgot the brown chick's name, sad face.
The system. The system goes up to a black-owned business.
What is with the black-owned business thing?
Looking
Stop
for
that.
change from the... so they can use whatever her name is. I can't be bothered.
Andy! Perfect, amazing, Andy! You're a G. Most people would kill to have that G.
So instead of leaving and going somewhere else, she starts giving this guy a moral lecture, and her girlfriend steals what she needs by hacking his thing. And the system just enables this. She doesn't even tell her off for it. They stole from this hardworking stiff instead of just taking their business elsewhere. There's gotta be more than one vending machine within driving distance. I didn't ever think that I would see the day where I have to say that stealing is wrong. Even if your mind is completely diseased by whatever political ideology this is, you ought to be able to at least recognize the inherent wrongness of a government employee, someone with higher social status, stealing from a poor working stiff just trying to keep food on the table is a disgusting act of selfishness.
Oh, okay. Those were a lot of words. I think we can start with the easiest thing first. Look, I know this is a nitpick in comparison to everything else she just said. Don't worry, I'll get to that in a second. I just feel like this is important to establish first. We don't actually know whether or not there's another vending machine readily available within driving distance. The world building points to the exact opposite being the case, actually. Have you ever actually seen a whole business predicated on the idea of vending machines? I haven't, and it's not like I live in the middle of nowhere. I live in a pretty large city. It's almost like they're a rarity. It's almost like this is one of the first pieces of world building we get about the surface. That most of the surface is made up of recycled scrap from the park. Vending machines definitely fit into that ballpark, don't you think? And if you were paying attention, Andy needed something pretty specific from that vending machine in particular. You know, android and machine parts for her job, which you see her doing directly after. You know, the job that she needs to make money. You know, that thing that people need to live. Which again, just really putting into question the aforementioned part about Andy is a government employee, someone with higher social status, stealing from a poor working stiff, just trying to put food on the table. First of all, Andy is not of a higher social status to anyone. If she was, she wouldn't be constantly overworked, hair graying, clearly infected with blue lung, and living paycheck to paycheck in a shitty rundown shack made of recycled garbage from the park. Which is actually Andy's whole point if you had actually paid attention to what she was saying in her little dialogue. The idea that Andy has some sort of special privilege or position in society is a false one. In fact, it's kinda laughable. Like, if she did, then why wasn't she invited to live in the park, or at least given a salary where that could be a feasible goal? I mean, after all, she works for them, right? According to you, that should be enough to establish some sort of higher power dynamic. But no, she's left to rot in extreme poverty with the rest of her fellow surface dwellers. The company treats her like she says they treat her, like a disposable cog in the machine, ready to be replaced at any moment like the rest of the people on the surface. The only reason she works there is because she needs some way to pay rent. And as for being part of the system, she's not security or administration. Her job quite literally has nothing to do with the implementation and or creation of Park Planet's public policy, or the execution and enforcement of said policy. She's an engineer, a junior engineer. Bottom of the ladder. She's not ICE, she's the clerk at your local county office. Also, Reggie doesn't look like he's any lower than her socioeconomically speaking. In fact, I think he might be higher than her in that regard. She doesn't own her own labor, Reggie does. She doesn't own her own business, Reggie does. She doesn't own any assets, Reggie does. And she doesn't own any means of commerce, or production, and access to often sought out materials, Reggie does. In fact, it's that exact power that he wields over her for the gall of being the burger flipper at McDonald's. Some of you might remember that over in real life when the McDonald's and Starbucks boycott happened in response to their support of Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people, some folks were doing what Reggie was doing here, which is harassing and discriminating against McDonald's and Starbucks employees. And obviously, like with most bad things, those people got rightly called out for being self-righteous and punching down at people who have nothing to do with the decisions McDonald's or Starbucks make. You know, instead of taking any action against the people who actually make the big decisions. And yeah, it is Reggie who is punching down here, not Andy, even with the stealing taken into account. As for the stealing, by the way, is it impolite? Fine, whatever. But can we really say it wasn't at least somewhat justified? Am I really supposed to feel bad for the petite bourgeois guy using the fact that he is in fact petite bourgeois to self-righteously leverage his own power and assets against a childhood friend, mind you, who's not only of the same or lower socioeconomic status as him, but also clearly being so exploited by her workplace that she needs to beg for supplies that she needs for said workplace? And am I really expected to get angry at the girl who needs to have those parts in order to live? And she really did need them, as we see later in the episode. But when refused sale for a frankly disgustingly immoral reason, she instead resorts to stealing it. Like, the review makes it out like she thinks stealing is cool or funny just for the fuck of it, when we know for a fact that isn't true because in the scene literally right after this, she presses Frankie about it. Like, the reason she initially gets mad and suspicious of Frankie when she shows her the stolen parts is because she thinks that Frankie stole them from some other rando. She only calms down when she sees Boombox because she realizes that Frankie stole from Reggie's vending machine specifically.
Screw Reggie. What does he know? You're a park engineer, D. Most people would kill to have that job. Besides...
Frankie, when did you buy these? Emphasis on buy. Oh yeah, boombox. Should have known. Well, let's get out of here before Reggie finds out you're a...
And yeah, frankly, I would calm down too, because honestly, he had that coming. If he has enough money and assets that he can willingly choose to miss out on a sale because he'd prefer to self-righteously discriminate against a fellow struggler, then he has enough money and assets to miss out on a sale because that girl needed it. I'm sorry, but I think any take that has Andy being portrayed as the shithead here is just morally off. How far are we into this video, by the way? Oh my goodness.
If he was discriminating against them because they're women or gay,
well,
or minorities,
I can
that would be
excuse
one
punching
thing.
down at
It
my
still would
impoverished
be
childhood
okay,
friend, but
it
I
would at
draw
least
the
be
line at
understandable, but
homophobia.
no. This is blatantly the main characters punching down, and the show treats it like it's silly and quirky, otherwise known as acceptable behavior.
No, the show treats stealing from a guy actively gatekeeping you from things that you need to live and acting self-righteously about it as silly and quirky. And you know what? The show is right, that shit's hilarious.
All of the swearing in the show feels a tad forced. The lady that wrote this is the same lady that wrote The Owl House, and it's very clear just in the vibe. That could be part of why I hate it. I do hate The Owl House.
I personally don't think the swearing is too much in the show. I mean, I swear in real life on about the same frequency as the characters do in the show. I mean, we're not like on Vivzy Pop levels, right? Although, admittedly, there she fucks is kind of a funny line in isolation. In the end, though, this is mostly personal preference, so I'm not gonna spend much time on it. We'll just have to agree to disagree.
The character interactions and facial expressions all feel very Owl House, which makes them feel oddly out of place in something that's supposed to be more mature.
She goes on to talk about how she feels that the scene with Andy running outside of the house and cursing was forced, but again, personal preference. I want to hone in on her comments about the show looking too much like the Owl House, aka kiddie and immature for a project like this, specifically in terms of character expression. It does feel like she's doing a chicken before the egg type thing. That's just Dana Terrace's style when it comes to expressions. The reason you think it's kiddie is because your first exposure to it was from a kids show. Her style when it comes to expressions, at least, isn't actually all that different compared to a lot of anime series, which, yeah, I imagine is sort of an inspiration for her. And even then, I'd argue that the expressions of Knights of Guinevere are actually way more gritty and detailed. Yes, even when they're being silly with it, partly because that's just the way the characters are designed. Which is confusing because, hey, there's that pin. You actually like the character designs. Remember, when you're making a critique of the way characters move in anime, you're also making a critique of the art style as well, because those things are fundamentally intertwined. Also, not every scene has to have everyone making emotionally complex, mature faces. It's fine to be a little bouncy and playful if the scene calls for it, whereas other scenes get to be a bit more dramatic. The only scene I would even say this critique actually applies to is when Guinevere screams out loud in that one scene, and even then, I feel like that part is meant to be delivered semi-comically because of how sudden and jarring the jump scare is for the audience.
Now that we're spending more time with the main thief, so does the entitlement. While at work collecting scrap, she and her boss find a Guinevere android. Her boss is extremely excited to sell it, and when Franklin overhears that, she's shocked. Why are you shocked? Of course he's going to sell it. That's his job. That's his business.
First up, Sparky doesn't really find anything. She's the one who found the Guinevere android. Second, the reason why she's shocked is because she has somewhat of a father-daughter relationship with Sparky. Not a healthy one, but the relationship is there nonetheless. This is heavily alluded to both when Sparky gets protective of Frankie and urges her to stay away from the labs, and later while he mentions that while he loves her, he can't show her special treatment. He knows that Frankie wants to be a park engineer. It's something that he's probably heard about a lot since Frankie mentions it so casually while they're hauling ass with Guinevere in tow. So the idea that he just immediately proposed the idea of selling it to her is a bit shocking. You could say I'm reading too much into that reaction, but it also brings up the fact that she's just having a moment, man. Part of Frankie's character is that she's a bit of a naive Disney adult who's obsessed with Guinevere, and the idea of working as a park engineer because it formed a core memory of her childhood. She clearly sees Guinevere in a much different way than most people, even humanizing her. So the idea that anyone could just see a beaten up Guinevere android and immediately jump to, hey, let's sell it, just comes off as cold-hearted and surprising to her.
Franklin wants the robot, and to convince her boss that he should give it to her, she starts talking about how she might be able to fix it and get a different job that way. So you just told your boss that you want him to give you what is basically a lot of money so you can go work for someone else. Why would he do that? What's in it for him? He's not your dad, he's your boss. Why not offer to let him sell it after you fix it? You don't even have to mention that you're going to use it to apply for a different job, just give it back after. Then he gets more money, you get your better job, everyone's happy. Now, this does happen later in the script, but I don't understand why this wasn't something that happened earlier. This just seems like a very basic thing to offer in exchange for someone doing you a massive favor.
First of all, do you honestly think Sparky's the type of guy to be under any illusion that this type of work doesn't suck and that everyone wouldn't leave for a better job if they had the chance to? You act like her mentioning this would get her in trouble, but Sparky isn't the typical real-life boss. He's a jaded old man who understands how shitty these conditions are. Second of all, the reason she's mentioning this is because she knows that Sparky is someone close to her and would in fact be susceptible to giving her the android if he knew it would help her. You ask why Sparky would do that for her, he's not her dad after all. But like I said, they do have somewhat of a father-daughter relationship going. Why else would Sparky get so protective of her at the mere mention of the labs? Why would he say that he loves her? Why would he do and say any of the things that he does and says to her? Also, the reason she doesn't propose selling Gwen after fixing her here is because Sparky shuts down the idea of fixing Guinevere altogether, because he doesn't want Frankie working in the labs.
I could fix her, get her working again. Cause if I do, maybe I can get an engineering job like Andy's in the labs, and I could... Careful!
No fixin', no labs. I don't want you involved in that dreamland crap. Those lab rats are always up to their necks in sick shit. Trust me, they're some of my best clients.
Not sure how you missed this. Oh, and also, sorry this review nearly bamboozled me. Frankie would prefer not to sell Guinevere in the first place. She only agrees to it later as the last resort. The only reason why Sparky agrees to this deal later is because Andy just got fired and is in dire need of money, and is, Frankie's roommate and friend. The whole setup and payoff of this confrontation is to establish Sparky's dual nature as a father figure. One who can be genuinely charitable and caring at times, but can also be cruel and sadistically cold-hearted due to his conflicting interests. Going into this next section, it should be noted that AJ kinda gets out of pocket here even for me. She makes a lot of personal accusations towards show co-creator Dana Terrace that kind of come out of left field, and I think are pretty unfair and unsubstantiated, and that I kind of wish she had edited out of the video, because it kind of comes off as sneering fanfiction about a person she evidently doesn't know anything about. The section starts normally enough, but then kind of diverges into wacky territory the farther she goes into it. You'll see what I mean in a bit.
Getting back to the system for a little bit, some jerk mocks her for her job and spits on her, which really sucks. That's a terrible thing to happen to anyone. So what does this lady do? Does she go and beat him up? Does she just leave it alone? No! She goes and gives him a moral lecture. Lecturing someone who just spat on you is insane behavior! If he's willing to just spit on you unprompted, he's clearly a dangerous or mentally deranged individual. You are a small woman! You know what would actually happen if she tried to morally lecture someone who just spat on her? They would lay her out on the floor is what they would do. This is the point where I really disconnected from the show because it is beyond believability.
Okay, so first of all, I love the idea that giving a potentially dangerous person a moral lecture as a small woman is the insane thing to do here. Meanwhile, trying to fisticuffs a potentially dangerous person as a small woman is a totally sane and acceptable option. She totally wouldn't die if she tried that, surely. Second of all, she's having a moment. She just got totally screwed over and exploited by the company that she worked her ass off for. And what is she greeted with the second she comes back from getting fired? Not sympathy, not any class solidarity, but people in the exact same position as her, chastising her, even going so far as to spit on her for just trying to get by like they do. As if she, the woman that just got royally fucked, pun not intended, by Park Planet, is some representative of them or their decisions. Of course she's going to emotionally crash out at the first person that fucks with her. Is it the most rational thing to do? Maybe not, but part of what makes good characters is that they're relatable and that they act like real human beings. And real human beings are not 100% rational all the time. We constantly let our emotions get to our head and make us do dumb shit. Hell, while it's not exactly a common occurrence, every now and then I see people confronting each other in the streets or on the bus or other places. Yes, even the small women. Is that very rational? No, but they still do it. Also, if you live in a big city like me, you would know that the more populous an area is, the least likely chance you have of getting laid flat if you do in fact confront someone.
This doesn't feel like a person living in a rundown dystopia. This feels like the writer talking through a character as a mouthpiece to voice her own problems. This is very clearly a self-insert for the Owl House lady, whatever her name is. She worked at Disney, she got crap for it because Disney sucks, and she got fired. This is what she wants to do in real life. She wants to find everyone who's disrespected her because she worked for a cesspool company and give them a lecture. It reeks of privilege.
Okay, so first of all, I say that a lot, don't I?
First of all, I need to stop saying first of all.
Oh, you know what Dana Terrace's name is.
Stop pretending like you don't, come on.
As for the self-insert thing, Dana Terrace was never fired by Disney. I'm not sure where you got that information from. Her show did get cancelled, but she was still a full-fledged Disney employee. They didn't get rid of her. Why would they? She had been working for them way before the Owl House was even a concept. What actually happened is that she left of her own accord because she didn't want to work on kids' shows anymore. Also, I don't remember there ever being a controversy about her working for Disney or anyone ever giving her shit for working for them. Maybe there's some obscure tweet out there with like 6 views and no likes that specifically presses her about it, but yeah, no, that didn't happen. This is what I mean by all this coming off as mean-spirited fanfiction. It seems like she's making stuff up about Dana just to justify her, frankly, ill-informed take about the show. Also, she does realize that Dana isn't the only one writing for the show, right? She's listed as a co-creator for a reason. There are a whole 2, count 'em, 2, other people writing the show along with her. Zach Marcus and John Bailey Owen. Even still though, would it really be that bad if Andy was an insert character? All good characters have at least some element of self-insert in them, because all good projects come from creators' own emotional reflections and experiences. This is why directors seem to tread over the same themes over and over again. Go through all of Steven Spielberg's filmography and slowly realize that all of his films are just different ways of unpacking his own childhood trauma from the divorce of his parents. One of those films is literally a thinly veiled retelling of how he came to use film as a way of coping with his emotions. And you know what? It's a good fucking movie.
A lot of emotion influences your art and a lot of your past experiences. Would you say that's like a running theme throughout Knights of Guinevere?
Yeah, I think it's a running theme throughout any artist's art. You start with a feeling, you try to grab onto that feeling, whether it comes from your head, your heart, your stomach, and you wrestle it out of you like a worm that's buried itself into your skin.
My glazing of the Fablemans aside, Andy is one of those aforementioned good characters. While she's meant to reflect all 3 of the writers' experiences working as creatives in a grueling industry, she also has her own unique character profile aspects that aren't analogous to any of the people working on the show.
A character this entitled and preachy would not last a week in a real dystopia where they actually have to struggle to survive. This character is from LA, not a slum.
Like I said, I don't think she's particularly entitled or preachy, and even if she was, people who live in dystopian slums in real life are not all uber-noble citizens who take their beatings humbly and passively. Andy isn't entitled, she's stressed out from her constant status as a low-class worker. Some of the most emotionally belligerent people I have met are people who have had nothing but horrible lives full of stress and suffering. When you're in an environment like this, you're more focused on getting your immediate needs met than you are emotional regulation. Are we implying that living in a slum makes you some enlightened class guru and builds character? If it did, maybe that guy wouldn't have spit on her in the first place. Also, I don't really like the idea that LA is on some high society shit. The majority of LA is middle class at best and homeless and starving and dying at worst. I say that as someone who actually lives in one of the low-income quote-unquote ghetto parts of it. I mean, we literally have the second highest homeless population out of every city in the nation, and that's per capita, by the way. I know this is a nitpick, but I'm honestly getting tired of LA being portrayed as this Disneyland where everyone is rich enough to live in the Hollywood Hills, and where everyone's dreams come true, or some shit. It's a lie born out of social media influencers, Hollywood producers, and people who unironically believe in the idea of the coastal elite.
And to make it even worse, the guy that spat on her is very clearly sick and dying. He coughs up a lot of blue stuff, which can't be good for him. He's dying. It's probably the Crownie's fault that he's going to die. He's lashing out at you because you're part of the system, and you tell him to go fuck himself. Masterful. What a likable character. I just can't help myself but root for this insufferable hag. I'm falling over myself to lick at her feet. That's just how likable she is. Nothing annoying or preachy about her.
First of all, oh my god, I fucking did it again! Deja vu, I've just been in this place before. It isn't actually clear or obvious how sick this guy is until he starts hacking up in front of Andy. And no, it isn't Andy's fault that this guy is dying. I don't understand how it would be, considering that the choice of materials that the park uses has literally nothing to do with her or her job description. I feel like it's kind of getting lost in this review that she's supposed to be a Disney Imagineer, not the Gestapo. Is it a phone assembly worker's fault too when people die in conflict mineral wars? Do we have to keep having the same conversation about this over and over again? And yeah, of course she told that guy to go fuck himself. He spat on her for a bullshit reason. Being sick isn't an excuse for that. In fact, I'm kind of baffled by the moral framework of this review. AJ also left out that despite the fact that this guy spit on her, before she says, but also fuck you, she actually apologizes for being so confrontational, right after seeing just how bad of a shape he's in, instead of continuing to lash out at him like she easily could have done. She's actually taking the high ground here. Unlike him, she actively empathizes with this man's situation and understands where his feelings are coming from, as someone who is also at risk for the blue lung thanks to Park Planet, even if she still believes he's in the wrong and should still go fuck himself. Which, yeah, he is, and yeah, he should. In fact, I would even say this is part of Andy's soft character arc for this episode, which actually hits a lot harder when you do in fact get confirmation that she's in the early stages of the disease. You know, it really sucks, because throughout this video for some reason, AJ really picks on Andy in particular, shitting on her the most out of any of the characters. But if you actually think about it, Andy's actually the ethical MVP of this episode. Even if you still think the stealing is ethically dubious, which I don't, but even if you do, that's like the one bad thing you could say about her, and really that wasn't even her doing, it was Frankie's. For the rest of the episode, we're shown how genuinely responsible and kind Andy can be, even to the point of being somewhat of a pushover. She's the one who does most of the chores around her and Frankie's place, and even quietly cleans up after her after getting fired, mind you, when she realizes that Frankie is having a moment. This is all despite the fact that she is constantly overworked and exploited by her bosses. She apologizes too and empathizes with the guy who spit on her, something that she really didn't need to do, by the way, but did anyways because she's kind of a softie deep down. Even when it's implied that she's kind of jealous of Frankie's skill with robotics, and when it's implied that she wouldn't want Frankie working her job anyways because it's a terrible one, she still doesn't have the heart to destroy Frankie's dreams and helps her on her way to achieving those dreams, even if it puts herself in danger. Hell, even when the danger actually shows its face, Andy still sticks around to defend Frankie with, presumably, her life? As she's actually willing to get physical to do so. Her, the spindly woman who can barely lift Guinevere's head. Also, I just realized this, but Andy totally didn't have to give Gwen her coat here. I just think that's cute and sweet. When Frankie's stripping out during a life or death situation, it's Andy, whose arm is completely fucked up by the way, who actually goes back to save her from following Guinevere. And despite the fact that her arm is indeed completely fucked up, and she nearly died, she still goes along with Frankie's plan, with a reassuring and comforting smile. And this is the character I'm supposed to think is a quote insufferable hag? And not just a genuinely sweet girl who's slowly losing her mind because of the world around her? But no. You know what, AJ? You're right. I agree. It's Andy's fault for calling out the guy who just committed battery against her. I can excuse spitting on a fellow member of the working class, but I draw the line at moral lectures. Like, again, I ask what moral framework we're even working on, because I don't think I like it.
Hi everyone, Editor Augustine here, with a better mic, apparently. Oh my god, this video is so fucking scuffed. Anyways. So, I don't know why I forgot to mention this earlier. I think I was so focused on the spitting thing because the review, AJ's review, brings it up so much that I got distracted. But that guy who spits on Andy, he actually says something pretty interesting right before he actually does spit on her. He sexually harasses her, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, the review that AJ puts out, AJ's review, calls Andy a hag for morally lecturing the guy who sexually harassed her. Yeah, I feel like it's really self-explanatory without why that's a bad take. That's a really bad take, AJ. That's really bad. But also at the same time, a lot of other people apparently missed it. Like they didn't get the innuendo about the scepter thing. So like I'm not gonna be like morally grandstanding about it that much towards AJ because I feel like she also probably missed it. Like, I'm 1000% sure this is an innocent mistake, and she didn't mean to, like, call, like, a victim of sexual harassment a hag. Yeah, I like, she doesn't even bring it up. Like, I'm pretty sure she just missed it. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Well, actually, no, that's not all that I wanted to say. I just think it was important to bring it up because it definitely recontextualizes Andy's character, especially in the context of this review, as someone who has the patience, maybe a saint is exaggerating it a bit, but has the patience of someone who has a lot of patience, because I know for a fact that I would not put up with someone sexually harassing me like that. I would not empathize with someone who is sexually harassing me. So yeah, Andy, yeah, I hold that she's the ethical MVP of this episode. She's not ag. Not ag. Anyways, back to our regularly scheduled program. Enjoy the worst mic quality. God fucking damn it.
I'm skipping part of this next section because honestly, I am a yapper and this video is already too long. But also because it's mostly her complaining about Frankie's hallucination friends being annoying and off-tone, which I personally don't think they are, but this isn't exactly something you can argue in favor or against, so I'll just chalk it up to different tastes.
These little acid trip babies encourage her to go steal the Gwen bot. The cat one even says, "Bite the hand that feeds." So we've almost made the connection in our own heads that this is a bad thing to do, and we're encouraging it like it's a good thing. Great. Mr. Bossman meets them at the docks as they're dragging Gwen back, and something he says is very telling. He says, "Do I not do right by you?" And Franklin's only response is, "You were just going to sell her." She doesn't argue that he's been a bad boss in any way, and she clearly feels close enough to him to ask him for favors. The bot belongs to him. She could have offered to buy it or something, anything, but the entire time the only person she cares about is herself. She doesn't even really care about her partner because what they're doing is potentially really illegal and could get both of them in serious trouble. Me, frickin' me. That's all she cares about. When her boss is talking to her, he said that the Gwenbot could get them a second ship for her. That is an enormous opportunity to offer someone. He's also thinking about her and her good, and she's turning around and disrespecting him both to his face and implicitly through her actions and attitude. She's acting like a spoiled teenager. And granted, they do call that out in the show, but it still doesn't feel like they're really condemning her. She's supposed to be poor. She ought to understand by this point in her life that you don't always get everything that you want. You don't always get your dream career. Even people who are very talented can't always make it and will be surpassed by people with less passion and talent who got lucky. Sometimes you want to be an actor and you end up with a brain disorder. Sometimes you want to be an artist and you end up an accountant. She can make a wonderful life for herself, a modest life, working a job she tolerates that can be enough. Your career is not the end-all be-all of your life, despite what our corporate overlords tell us. Loving your job is a privilege afforded only to a select few, and most of us will never have that. I hate this character. She's selfish, entitled, and backstabby. Why am I supposed to root for her? She's being set up to almost have a villain arc from all of the other information in the show. The place that she wants to work at pollutes the environment, tortures the princess, and is a force of extreme oppression that is affecting everyone around her in a negative way. And the thing is, that could work. That could be a genuinely really interesting story about how people react in the face of fascism, but the story treats her like she's right, and I can't stand it. It boils my blood.
Okay, this is a pretty big section, and I have many thoughts, so let's just go through it in chunks. First, not of all, let's start with the idea that Frankie is some selfish backstabbing hack. Is it a little selfish? Sure. The show doesn't dispute that. In fact, this whole scene was meant to show the complexity of the situation even if we're ultimately meant to side with Frankie. But again, we're doing this in chunks, so put a pin in that. While the show doesn't shy away from the fact that there's an element of selfishness here, it also does a good job of showing us why Frankie's decisions are able to be sympathized with, and not entirely from a place of selfishness, and actually completely valid given the rest of the context we're given in this scene and in the show in general. While yes, on the surface Frankie's stated goal when it comes to stealing Guinevere is simply to get her dream job. However, there's actually a not-so-hidden second reason why she wants to do this, which most people, including myself, picked up on first watch. But for some reason, the review didn't? And it's that while on a conscience and logical level, she understands that Guinevere is just a robot and still agrees to give her away, although she really only goes along with that to get Andy on her side and as the last resort with Sparky, on a subconscious level, she very much sees Gwen as a human, as a person. So she sees the idea of just leaving her to get scrapped up and sold to the highest bidder as an extremely cruel act of injustice. It's why we get lines like these.
She doesn't really look like any of these models.
Doesn't matter what model she is. You need to go back for her.
Yeah, the princess is the princess.
Bite the hand that feeds. Think of it this way. Is it stealing or is it rescuing?
She seemed sad when we locked her in there. Couldn't move or speak.
Who's locked up?
And Sparky's just gonna chop her up? Ugh, what an ass! Frankie! Right, Guinevere?
That's right.
You were just going to sell her, man! To one of your nasty clients. Stop! You're gonna damage her!
But the Gwendroid.
Screamed. Yeah.
But they're not programmed to...
Scream. No. Do you think she was trying to warn us?
Hello, little ones. Are you lost? Well, you've been such a good friend to me. Allow me to sort this out for you.
Frankie! Frankie! No, she helped us! We have to help her! How?
In fact, in this line specifically, where she's feeling guilty about leaving Gwen alone and calling Sparky an ass, it's implied that she made up her mind about stealing Gwen because the hallucination babies kept guilt-tripping her about it and working her up about it. Seriously, she only really starts to look all sad and emotional about it once the pink hippo thing asks whether or not it would be stealing or rescuing. The idea of just letting Gwen rot eats at her so bad she genuinely gets angry about it. So when Sparky asks, "Do I not do right by you?" Sure, she responds, "This could be a real chance for me." But right before that, she also says, "You were just going to sell her to one of your nasty clients." Not, "You were just going to sell her," but "You were just going to sell her to one of your nasty clients," which is a pretty important distinction. The idea that Gwen could end up in the hands of some sicko genuinely disturbs her. So yes, while she does do what she does to get her dream job, she's also doing it to save a person's life. Guinevere's life. She wants to save Guinevere in the same way Guinevere symbolically saved her. It's that core memory, the wonder and awe from that one interaction with Gwen in her childhood that informs the person that she is today. So much so that it's the reason that she wants to be a park engineer in the first place. Like, the fact that she's a naive Disney adult who's emotionally attached to Guinevere is literally the foundational core of her character.
Remember when we snuck in the park to play that crane game? We didn't get the doll, but we met a real Gwen. That memory is still so vivid. And now you make stuff that gives other people memories like that. I just think that's cool as shit, D. Right, Guinevere?
That's right.
I'm not sure how you missed this. So, going back to that pin, while it's shown that both Sparky and Frankie have their own reasons, the show, and like 99% of the audience except for AJ apparently, ultimately sides with Frankie because Frankie is the only one who's not trying to get what we as the audience know is a sentient being killed. Also, what do you mean she doesn't care that what they're doing is potentially illegal? It's not potentially illegal, it's just illegal. Illegality was acknowledged on the word go, and Andy agreed anyways. What, does she need to check in every 5 minutes to make sure that Andy still knows that what they're doing is illegal and if it's okay with her? Also, Sparky trying to sell Guinevere is equally illegal too, yet I don't see you getting on his case for trying to rope Frankie into it. Wow, what a thoughtful boss. Secondly, holy shit, that was a big chunk. Secondly, on the topic of Sparky, let's talk about Sparky being a good boss, yeah? Sparky does to an extent care about Frankie, but it's very clear that this isn't a very healthy or loyal type of relationship. In fact, the power imbalance here is pretty apparent. Sparky is unfortunately the perfect example of the petite bourgeois plight. He himself is poor and working class and sympathizes to an extent with his fellow working class people up until it profits his business to brutalize them. Even if it wasn't a dream job thing, can you really blame Frankie for wanting to escape a situation where the work is not only shit, but also a situation in which she's emotionally manipulated and or led on in one instant, and brutalized if she doesn't comply the next? I don't care how many shifts Sparky throws at her, he's clearly way more backstabby and unreliable than he could ever dream to be. He rips out her teeth for Christ's sake. Thirdly, let's be honest, the only reason Guinevere belongs to him is because Frankie happened to find her while on the clock. I get that by virtue of the fact that Sparky is her boss, he gets a say in what to do with Gwen. But in any ethical situation, Frankie would at least have some sort of say in it too, right? Or at least have one of those shitty work pizza parties thrown in her honor or something. Thirdly, I really don't like this rant about settling and giving up on your dreams, and I don't like this idea that poor people never get antsy and don't have dreams and aspirations by virtue of the fact that they're poor. Because they do in fact do and have all of these things. The only reason that a lot of poor people have to settle is because they don't have the opportunity or resources to actually chase after those dreams. And yes, she is old enough to understand the reality that it's okay to settle if you don't have the resources or opportunity to realize those dreams, which is why she does. What do you think she's been doing this whole time? For her whole life, she's done nothing but settle. She was a poor child who couldn't afford a crane machine game, and her adult life is still spent in poverty working 2 jobs, one of which results in her losing her teeth if she misbehaves. The whole point is that this Guinevere android is the one and only real chance she has at getting the dream job, at escaping another job that she doesn't care about and is actively harming her. You think if you went to a poor person in real life and gave them the opportunity for their dream job, they would just go, "No thanks, I'm not falling for your corporate propaganda, I'm more than my job." No, they would fight for that, because they know how much something like that means. It's the reason why so many people who are forced to settle end up working their asses off so that their kids can have that, so that their kids can have better lives, so that their kids don't have to make the sacrifices they did, so that their kids don't have the same regrets that they have. I know this because I'm the child of immigrants who came from an impoverished background, and while I don't exactly have a good relationship with my family for a whole other set of reasons, even I can acknowledge the fact that they sacrificed a lot for me, to the point where I went from getting all my childhood toys from Christmas drives to now being the one who can donate to those Christmas drives. Though I still don't make that much money. Yes, we're more than our jobs, but it's not about that. It's how we want to spend the majority of our years on this earth. And remember, this is a one-way trip. We only have one of these lives. And obviously, we would want to spend that life doing something that matters to us or that we love. Fourthly, quote-unquote, the place that she wants to work at pollutes the environment. Well, okay, so does every other workplace on the surface of the earth, both in universe and in real life. Sparky's business isn't predicated on hugs and kisses. He's literally a plastic scavenger. His whole business is selling plastics to the park so that they can start the pollution cycle all over again. The guy that coughs on Andy probably works in a place that heavily relies on that blue gunk that the androids are made out of, hence the blue lung. That Reggie guy at the beginning, he sells parts used in the making of androids. Frankie's first job is just a warehouse churning out propaganda merch for Park Planet. The whole system relies and depends on the excess of waste. It's the system, not random bottom rungers like Andy and Frankie who live within it. Also, nitpick, I know, but Frankie doesn't know about the torturing the princess thing. Nobody knows about it other than, like, Olivia and security, maybe? That's kind of like the whole point of the show. I'm not sure why you would bring that up as a point against her. Also, I feel like I've addressed the oppressive company thing so many times, and I don't want to say the same things over and over again. Lastly, oh my gosh, about the villain arc, it could still very much happen, and still be played well despite you saying that the show treats her as in the right. The reason that the show treats her like she's in the right in this episode is because, yeah, she mostly was in the right in this episode. She saved Gwen from being torn apart. What this episode does is mostly show our main character's sympathetic sides, but also lays the groundwork for possible tensions in the future. You know, like a pilot is supposed to do, such as Andy's mental and physical descent potentially leading to desperate choices, or Frankie's Disney adult naivete leading to tensions between her own desires and her genuine care for others. Self-plug, I know, but I kinda have this Knights of Guinevere analysis/theory video in the works that kinda delves into this more. I don't want to spoil too much, but basically I think all 3 girls of our main trio have the potential to be class traitors in the future. At least I think that's what they're going for. Not because they're terrible people like this review seems to suggest. They're all pretty sweet and charming, but they all have some stuff going on in the background that frankly would make a legendary villain crash out completely understandable. I just don't know which one of them it will be yet. But for my own little reasons, I think it might be Andy. And no, it's not because she's a bad person or a hag. What I think Knights of Guinevere is supposed to be is an exploration of the struggle between the virtues and wonders we were taught as children versus the pessimistic nihilism that the world tries so desperately to make us surrender to. Oh my god, that section is over, thank god. I'm nearly 7,000 words into this. I need a break. I'm gonna go draw Guinevere.
It got better at first by showing off this giant sunshine biomechanical horror. I was relieved. Finally, something worth watching. And then it committed an atrocity. Most of my criticism up until now has been subjectively my opinion, but this is just an objectively incorrect way to write something. The Gwenbot, the one that couldn't walk 2 minutes ago, destroys the Sunbot off screen within a 30-second period by herself. Well, so much for stakes. The bad guys have a second moon-themed monstrous horror, but that doesn't even matter because the plot device princess can just kill it within 30 seconds off screen again. Fantastic.
Objectively incorrect, or objectively incorrect to you, and therefore subjective. The inherent subjectivity of media criticism aside, writing an overpowered character isn't always bad so long as it adds to the intrigue of the story rather than takes away from it, which I think is the case here with with Knights of Guinevere. You mentioned how Gwen couldn't walk by herself a few minutes ago, yet suddenly she can solo this guy off screen, but that's kind of the point. The scene is meant to get us to question the limitations of what Guinevere can and cannot do. We've already been shown that she can't do everything. She didn't get up and start fighting Sparky when he stowed her away, and she didn't get up and start fighting Sparky when he was literally waving a shock baton in her face. The show is clearly implying that there's something unique about this situation that allows Gwen to actually get up and fight, and that we'll learn more about it in future episodes. The stakes haven't been erased, they've just been recontextualized. While we know that Guinevere can pose a serious threat to some of the dangers that the girls have been facing, we have no idea when or under what pretext she can actually do that, or whether she'll be as powerful each time she does do that. It's why this happens off screen, so that the mystery of Guinevere's power is kept alive. Sure, they could have shown us a glorious and bloody anime fight where they map out exactly how Guinevere laid waste to this guy, and as cool as that sounds, it would be a momentary feeling of bliss that ultimately wouldn't leave us with many questions for the following episodes, and probably would leave us feeling pretty empty. It's why this scene is by far the most emotionally impactful, at least from what I've seen from ReactTubers, and is the one that leaves the most lasting impression aside from the opening scene. It's also why this scene is by far the one that gets the most speculation within the fandom. Again, other than the opening scene. People are theorizing that Guinevere has low energy reserves, or that some other mechanical function is responsible for the fact that she's mostly a vegetable half the time, and can only do stuff like this in very small bursts. Some people are saying that Guinevere isn't programmed to hurt people, but can hurt other androids and Park Planet creations. Some people are speculating that Guinevere is in some roguelike scenario where she's escaped so many times she's actually learned how to fight most of the things Park Planet throws at her, which actually wouldn't make her OP, it would just make her very skilled. The theory I personally subscribe to is a mix between the first and the last, just because that seems to be the implication that the show is alluding to. But for now, we just don't know. I'm just saying the scene doesn't ruin anything, it does the exact opposite. It spurs intrigue. Also, about the moon guy, we have no idea whether or not he's on the same power scale as the sun guy, they just look similar. The next section is AJ's rewrite of the series, which, yeah, I have some comments on.
Now I have a rule on this channel. I never make a video about anything I don't think I could fix. The first thing that needs to be changed, stealing from Mr. Based. What I would do is after the system tries buying from him and can't, Frankie puts her back in the car and tries to do it for her since she's not a crownie. We can have Mr. Based reject her again because she's married to a crownie, or dating, I'm not quite sure, which could establish that maybe Mr. Based is a little overzealous in his principles. We could also establish through dialogue that he's either got the best prices around or that he's the only person that sells the particular parts that they need. So by him refusing to sell to the system, she quite literally can't do her job, which forces Frankie to steal the parts that they need. Since the system is more opposed to stealing than Frankie is, we could have her toss some money out the car window to Mr. Based as they're making their getaway.
First of all, this guy is already too zealous. We don't need a redundant plot point of Frankie also trying to buy it, especially since it seems a bit nonsensical. Why would her buying it for Andy instead of Andy buying it herself change Reggie's mind anyways? Second of all, the show already does what you're suggesting in a much cleaner way through a mix of short dialogue exchanges and implications. Why won't Reggie do business with her? 'Cause she's a crownie. What's a crownie? Oh, it's her job. What's her job? An engineer? Oh, cool. What's she trying to buy? Oh, parts. Parts she probably needs for her job. This guy's an asshole and they're probably gonna have to steal from him. Boom. Easy. Simple. Whereas this version is just way too redundant and has way too much happening, especially for an introductory scene. Remember, this scene has the added responsibility of not only establishing the dynamics of this world, but also its basic world-building concepts. You can't do all of that if you're too bogged down in superfluous details.
When they find the Gwen bot, we could have Frankie offer to buy it off him. There are two options that I think could work here. Either he rejects her because he doesn't want her to work for the company, which is something that was already set up, so it would fit with his character for him to not sell to her out of principle. Or he says yes, but it's a lot of money that would take a really long time to save up.
Again, I think this struggles from one of the things I mentioned in the previous rewrite section, which is that it's just a bit nonsensical. The second problem with this rewrite arises when you realize that Frankie asking to buy Guinevere off of Sparky is completely out of left field. Frankie more than anyone should know just how valuable something like a Gwendroid is. It's literally one of the most lucrative things someone could own. Why wouldn't she anticipate it being worth an arm and a leg and completely out of her price range? I mean, I don't know the exact price of my friend's car, but just by understanding what it is, I can probably anticipate it'd be miles out of my price range, so why would I even ask about buying it? She might as well just appeal to Sparky's emotions and ask for it at that point, or just say fuck it and steal it at that point. Which, yeah, that's what she does in the actual show. However, if you really wanted to squeeze this in, which I really don't think you should, it's frankly redundant and lengthens a scene that doesn't need to be lengthened. But if you really wanted to, maybe you could have Frankie excitedly blabbing out a bunch of proposals only to stop herself between proposals, realizing how neither of them would work, and then simply resorting to asking Sparky to just give the Gwendroid to her, upon which he refuses. Like I said, I'm not against characters doing or saying nonsensical or stupid things, so long as it's understandable why they would do or say those nonsensical or stupid things. You just gotta show the emotionality behind it. But like I said, even my rewrite of this rewrite is just unnecessary and muddies down a perfectly fine scene.
When the guy spits on the system, she should storm after him, not to give him a moral lecture, but to shove him and yell in his face to teach him a lesson. But she backs down when she sees that he's actually dying and just lashing out. That way we can establish her as someone who isn't afraid to protect herself, but she also has compassion for the people around her. She understands that the company she works for is evil and works there despite having moral quandaries with it. Something she said in her rants is something along the lines of, "I know they suck, but I have to have this job and I only work in engineering anyway." I'd rather this mentality be expressed through her actions and behavior rather than through her angry feministic-esque diatribes. They're incredibly annoying.
Comment about angry feminist-esque diatribes aside, doesn't she literally do everything just described like word for word in the original show? Sure, she doesn't shove him per se, but she does start yelling in his face trying to teach him a lesson, albeit a moral one, but a lesson all the same. And when he starts hacking his lungs out, Andy backs off and apologizes. Sure, she also tells him, "but also fuck you," but not only was she justified in that, she does it under the pretext of still understanding why the guy would be so angry, hoping that he gets better. It's her way of empathizing with the guy while still reminding him to knock it the fuck off and not to try that shit again. Unless what you're implying is that you want her to be more aggro, to which I ask, what point would there be to making her more aggro in the scene other than to make her less likable, not more likable? Would she somehow be less annoying if instead of employing her completely correct diatribe, mind you, she instead starts suplexing this man while cursing out his entire bloodline?
If we decide to have them going the buying route though, I have an idea. Frankie could beg the system to use their emergency fund to buy the Gwenbot, promising that it's an investment in their future and they'll make all that money back when she has the job. That's when we could have the system tell her that she lost her job, so they have to keep that emergency fund. A good emergency fund should be at least 6 months worth of expenses. It's implied through the world building that the system makes a lot more money at her job than Frankie does at hers, so they were most likely leaning on her to be the main breadwinner. With all that income gone, they need that emergency fund to keep them afloat until she can find new work. She can either give up on the opportunity of a lifetime, destroy their stability against the wishes of her partner, or what we'll go with, stealing the bot with a promise to herself to pay the boss man back later.
There are several issues with this section in particular. First issue with this rewrite section. The idea that Andy and Frankie would have enough money to have an emergency fund in the first place, while not impossible, is definitely a stretch, especially in a dystopian world such as this. Second issue, and this one is the biggest. This whole scenario you're describing either completely overshadows or completely ignores a huge emotional component of the plot and of Frankie's character. Frankie's motivation to steal Gwen isn't purely self-indulgent. She only makes up her mind to steal her when she realizes just how emotionally attached she is to her and how she wants to save her. Meanwhile, the rewrite version makes it sound like she's obsessed with the monetary success and status of her dream job rather than some deeper or more sympathetic emotional tie to it. Which is ironically what the review portion of this video wrongfully accuses the show of doing. It also makes Frankie's "why I do the things I do" speech not hit nearly as hard because it just seems like it's coming out of left field in this version, instead of being this genuinely heartfelt epiphany and arc that was built up throughout the entire episode, and which gets its climax at the end.
No, she helped us! We have to help her!
Third issue, like before, this is just way too much for way too little. Way too many steps to get to one plot point that can be wrapped up in a much cleaner sequence of events that accomplishes so much more. Let's compare and contrast it to the original script, for example. In your version of events, the only thing that is really accomplished is A. Frankie and Andy have an understandable reason for stealing the Gwendroid. Whereas in the show's version of events, multiple things are accomplished and in a much cleaner fashion. A. Frankie slowly realizes her affinity for Guinevere, setting up for a story arc throughout the rest of the episode. B. Gains motivation to steal her because of that affinity, which leads to C. Frankie introduces Andy to Guinevere while having her big epiphany moment, which not only serves as a way for the audience to really get to know Frankie as a character, but also as even more setup for the climax of the episode. And also serves as a reason for D, Andy to get motivation to steal Guinevere, while also E, implying that she's only agreeing to this because something's going on with her that we don't know yet. But through context clues, we can F, come to the conclusion that it has something to do with Frankie's feelings in Andy's job position. Holy shit, that took so many retakes. You see how much better it sounds when you really break it down like that? Sometimes less really is just more. Fourth issue, the rewrite comes off as way too robotic emotions-wise and way too artificial. The concept of the emergency fund comes out of nowhere and doesn't even matter in the end and has little to do with the characters' psyches. Everything described just feels like a contrivance to get from plot point A to plot point B, whereas the events in the actual show directly entangle the decision to steal Guinevere with the character's deepest Jungian needs. Fifth issue, nitpick time. At no point is it implied in the world building that Andy makes a lot more money than Frankie. I'm not sure where you got that from. They seem to be on pretty even footing financially speaking.
If we go the route of him not selling to her out of principle, we could have his mind be changed by realizing that nothing he could do could ever stop her. And if we decide to go the buying route, we could just have her promise to pay him back later, and he agrees, but he's got his eye on her.
Again, simultaneously too much and yet too little. Retreads on motivations that were already established and fails to exemplify the dual nature of Frankie and Sparky's relationship. And also doubly fails to give us the genuinely dramatic and stakes-changing moment of Andy being fired and having blue lung. No, that important part of Andy's life was instead relegated to mere plot contrivance. Also fails to show us Andy and Sparky having a moment of connection over their shared value of money as a prime motivator. Well, at least Sparky is having the moment anyways.
Last thing that needs to be changed is Gwen killing the gigantic biomechanical horror. I don't know her power set or what actually happened off screen, so it's a little harder to make tweaks to that. I would need more information to make something truly great. Whatever the case though, we do need Gwen to do something. I just don't want it to be a full killing of the bot. Otherwise, why the heck should I be scared of future biomechanical horrors? And if she could do that the whole time, why did it take her so long to escape? It creates such a massive plot hole, I can't believe they left it in. Maybe it'll be fixed in the future, we are only on the pilot after all. But man, does it suck all the wind out of your sails. Instead, we'll have Gwen either do something that temporarily incapacitates the bot so they can get away, or something that assists the other two in escaping. That way the sun guy doesn't get completely wasted in the pilot and we can get to see him again later. There will be more stakes this way because our main gang will still have the threat of imminent death that could come at any time looming over them.
I feel like I already addressed why this doesn't need a rewrite to begin with, but screw it, I'll nitpick. We're towards the end of the video anyways, why not? The reason we should still be scared of future biomechanical horrors even when Gwen is around is that we still don't understand the nature of her powers. That's like the whole point, that's why it's a mystery. Again, she can't do everything. We've been shown that she's a potato most of the time, and going by the teaser, she's probably going to be even more helpless by the time the next episode comes out. Perhaps even a danger to the girls themselves. Hey yeah, there's something you didn't think about. The fact that Gwen's creepy side is meant to unnerve us. Make us question whether or not her strength is actually an asset or a potential threat. This rewrite is so focused on the fact of Gwen being able to take out biomechanical horrors that it doesn't stop to consider that Gwen might be the next biomechanical horror that the girls will face. Most likely due to Guinevere not being in full control of her body due to the mechanical and neurological damage she's sustained. But really, none of us know yet, because we're not supposed to know yet, because it's a pilot. Also, Sir Arthur's death is clearly meant as a prelude to the Moon Soldier, whose power scale we know nothing about yet. Also, oh look, another thing I'm saying a lot. Gwen didn't take long to escape, she's escaped multiple times. This is just the first time she's made it out this far.
We've found traces of your princess. She made it to the surface this time.
The surface? No! My poor dear Guinevere!
Which only implies more that she can't ex machina her way out of everything, and that her power comes from something deeper and more interesting that we'll learn about in the following episodes. It's not a plot hole, it's a plot twist that we're meant to take seriously and speculate on. To imply that it's a plot hole is to imply that there's been some giant oversight within the script itself, when we know that's not the case because the fact that Guinevere can humble the fuck out of her opponents has been alluded to throughout the episode. In the opening scene where Gwen jumps off the tower balcony, we're introduced to the idea of this planet's security, along with the fact that Kid Olivia is fairly confident in Security's ability to recapture Gwen and bring her back in a relatively short time period. The implication being that they've done so before with relative ease. Throughout the episode, the topic of security gets brought up again and again as the episode progresses, so we get an understanding of their power and scale. And the next time security is mentioned to a now decrepit Olivia, she no longer has any confidence in sending them out to go get Guinevere, flat out stating that they wouldn't be able to handle it, implying that Gwen has gotten a lot harder to catch within the past decades. And we get the answer as to why this is the case in the climax of the episode, a smooth resolve and payoff to the things that have been set up. This is actually why I'm unironically a believer in the roguelike theory when it comes to Guinevere's strengths, and while I can't make any definitive claims about this, because again, pilot episode, it does seem to be the one that's the most accurate, especially since Olivia seemed somewhat confident in Sir Arthur's ability to retrieve Gwen. It kind of implies that Sir Arthur was able to fight on even footing with Gwen at one point, perhaps winning every time, only for this time to be the one where Guinevere finally gets her perfect hitless boss run. Level 1 Wretch, Moonrithel's Night Sword only, no summon signs. If you're one of the few people in the Knights of Guinevere fandom that actually understood that joke, congratulations, you're cool. You know you are, you get it. But I digress. I don't think anyone should feel confident in rewriting the scene at all because we don't understand the nature of what we're rewriting yet, or how rewriting it could possibly fuck up future episodes, not save them.
But these characters need to improve and fast, otherwise it will be impossible for me to watch. I cannot watch a show that treats the bad behavior of its main characters as cute or quirky. It's a trend that I've noticed a lot in media recently, and it seems like it's getting worse. I think that depicting crime as not a bad thing or not a big deal is genuinely harmful for society and encourages people to do crime if they think they can justify or excuse it. A society in which a culture of crime is encouraged will descend into total anarchy, which most negatively affects the weak and morally pure. We have many examples of what that looks like around the world and throughout history, and it is not a pleasant environment to live in, and I worry about that. I don't want to live like that. And I have serious concerns that our society is starting to descend into that. I don't like seeing crime encouraged on screen. It makes me feel sick to my stomach. Stealing is bad. Ingratitude is bad. It's not funny. It's not a victimless crime. It's not a quirky little personality trait. It's not okay. And I don't like seeing it encouraged like this.
Oh, yeah. This is where the video kind of loses me entirely. I don't know if it's because me and AJ have fundamentally different beliefs in regards to criminality politics, or if it's because we have different socioeconomic backgrounds, different experiences with people in general. I don't know. I genuinely do not know. I don't know a thing about this person. What I do know is that Knights of Guinevere isn't trying to encourage bad behavior. What Knights of Guinevere is trying to do, and actually does a pretty good job of doing, is showing the reality of crime as an everyday occurrence and reality in places like these, if sometimes slightly humorous. Sure, I agree. I think it would be a good thing if we lived in a world where there was no crime to be found and where it was never justified, including stealing. But Andy and Frankie, including many other people in real life, don't live in that world. They live in a world where crime is how you survive. You say that crime is always wrong and can never be justified, but is that actually true when you live in a legal system and economic system that is not only openly discriminatory, but straight up morally bankrupt? Many of you might have noticed the real-life spike in crime that took place around the COVID era, and while that rise was very shortly-lived, and dropped back down immediately after the fact, many retailers and businesses took it upon themselves to double down on security and lock up many items that would have been free to grab beforehand. While some of these items tend to be expensive products like electronics, if you're a city girl like me and have access to multiple stores of the same retail branch within a relatively small area, you'll start to notice a disturbing trend in the things that consistently get locked up the most. Things like hygiene products, over-the-counter medicine, and baby formula. That's because these products are typically the most stolen items of their respective stores. You know, things people either need to live or need to live even semi-decently. If you do a little research into this, you'll realize that these things are typically stolen for two main reasons, and by two main types of people. Let's discuss the first. Wow, I'm such a great writer. These are individuals who steal these items out of economic instability and need. Are you really going to argue that doing the crime in this scenario isn't justified? Are you really going to argue that stealing baby formula to feed a hungry newborn child is wrong? Especially in a world that does nothing to help its most poor and needy? Andy and Frankie never did anything other than steal out of need and desperation. Andy stole something that she needed so that she wouldn't get fired. Though she did anyways, cause fuck man, sometimes the world is just cruel like that. And she also agreed to stealing Guinevere because she was hoping that there was some sort of reward out for her. Some sort of reward that would get her out of this financial crisis. Whereas Frankie stole something because it was very likely to be her ticket out of a job where she's physically and emotionally abused, and to save a person's life. To say that Andy and Frankie were somehow wrong or not at least somewhat justified in their actions is insane to me. And to say that the show is encouraging crime as a virtue unto itself because it realistically shows how people will resort to crime to get out of terrible situations is also insane to me. Forgive me if I and the writers of the show are not about to finger wag at a single mother for stealing baby formula for her child. Or the homeless guy who got so tired of smelling like sweat and vomit all the time that he stole a stick of deodorant. And forgive me if I and the creators of the show are not about to sympathize with people who would. I know those sound like extreme examples, but they really aren't. You would be genuinely surprised at the absolutely god-awful smells I am subjected to on a daily basis just being someone who rides public transit in LA. Seriously, you have not witnessed the homeless crisis until you witness a lady sitting right in front of you having a full emotional breakdown, tears and all, about how she desperately wants a pair of new pants because she's so tired of smelling like rancid piss all the time. I'm not joking, that genuinely happened on one of my morning commutes. It was awful. So yeah, to anybody who's suffering out there that happens to see this video, you are not wrong for wanting to feed your child. You are not wrong for not wanting to smell so bad that people ostracize you and talk about you like you're not even human. You are not wrong for wanting to live in safety, stability, and dignity, and I'm never going to imply that you are. As for that second group of people who steal, these are typically organized groups that raid retail stores for those aforementioned needed products, who then go on to sell them to more desperate people at below market prices. In this instance, this group definitely isn't justified and definitely is in the wrong. But the only reason they have a market to sell to is because of there being such a prevalence of desperate people in the first place. Which segues into my main point about this review's perspective on why crime happens in the first place. It's just terribly skewed. The normalization of crime isn't what causes anarchy or instability or inequality. It's anarchy, instability, and inequality that causes the normalization of crime. You are confusing the symptoms of a disease with the disease itself. Crime is a poverty and inequality issue first and foremost, not the other way around, no matter how much our society wants to whitewash it to be so. Any sociologist or criminologist even remotely well-versed in their area of study can tell you just how much crime correlates with poverty, such as but not limited to the aforementioned stealing and reselling. The people committing these crimes typically do it because they perceive the reward that they get from making an honest living as dog shit in comparison to what they could be making by becoming vicious criminals. Again, I need to clarify this so I'm not taken out of context. I'm not defending these types of people. I think that there are crimes that are morally wrong no matter how you look at them. What I'm saying is that it's important to understand the people who commit these heinous acts so that we can address the root of their behavior. Assuming that we can avert crime by moralizing it away or pretending like it's not a part of daily life and erasing that fact from our media is not only a false premise but an actively counterproductive one. We should all take a page out of Andy's book. We should all learn to empathize to some extent or another with even the most intolerable members of our society. Not because they deserve it, but because it helps us reflect as what we could have done as a society to encourage this person away from the path that they have chosen. What we could have done to prevent this person from becoming the monster they are and addressing those issues on a systemic level. We are never going to get rid of the criminal element by moralizing it away and simply telling people not to commit crime. That might work on an individual level where you're actually close with the person committing terrible crimes, but this rugged individualist approach has infamously failed time and time again to accomplish remotely anything on a societal level. The only way we are going to stop this issue isn't by targeting the individuals who commit these crimes, but the system that actively incentivizes them to participate in these crimes in the first place. Which is ultimately the whole point Andy and the show as a whole is trying to illustrate to us. That we're so obsessed with individuality as a concept that we're not understanding just how badly the system is fucking us, and actively morphing us into people who are either incentivized to, or have to, commit moral compromise after moral compromise. You talk about protecting the weak and morally pure, but you completely ignore the fact that the people who often commit crimes, including stealing, were once themselves the innocent and morally pure, only to be broken down by the system in which they found themselves in. And a lot of crimes, especially stealing, are committed by those who are the weakest in our society. The outcasts, the dredges, those who are easily taken advantage of. But for some reason in this country, we can't acknowledge the fact that poor people and homeless people deserve so much more than what they currently get without trying to woofify them, without trying to turn them into perfect victims. They're not. A lot of impoverished people engage in behavior that is not healthy to themselves or to the people around them. But that doesn't mean that they are undeserving of better conditions or a better life, or that they themselves are not still vulnerable members of society. It's why prisoners are often considered part of the vulnerable classes of people by most of the social sciences, and why you need to get special permission and training before you interact with them for research, no matter what crime they committed. I mean, hell, I should know, I literally had to go through that training. Okay, rant about sociopolitics over, except not really, because this actually relates to why I like Knights of Guinevere so much. A common pattern that I have noticed both in this video and within the Knights of Guinevere fandom itself, unfortunately, is that Knights of Guinevere is some sort of cynical, pessimistic edge piece, born purely out of spite for Walt Disney and everyone who works with them. And while it's absolutely true that Knights of Guinevere is a commentary on Disney to some extent, to boil it down to that being its primary thematic topic is a shallow interpretation of the show at best, and a critical misunderstanding of it at worst. What Knights of Guinevere is a love letter to people who have either worked in the creative industry or who have dreams and aspirations of working in said industry. It's a simultaneous acknowledgement of their heartache and frustrations while also being a hopeful reminder that they should still keep holding on to their childlike creative wonder, no matter how much the world tries to take that away from them. The show acknowledges the fact that Frankie is naive, that becoming a creative is not all puppies and rainbows, both in real life and in the show. You're more likely than not to be at the whims of extremely morally reprehensible executives who are actively making the world a worse place, while you yourself are getting completely exploited, overworked, and screwed over at every turn. Where the show sides with Frankie, though, is that despite all this, Frankie still holds on to that thing that made her want to be a park engineer in the first place. That love and affinity for Guinevere, the childhood awe and goodness that she stood for. The way she exemplifies all the wonder and virtues that we were promised when we were little, that the world could be our oysters. The show could have gone the route of so many a bad commentary where it makes you feel stupid and wrong for ever enjoying these old heroes of myth that we used to look up to as children. They could have made Gwen this one-note evil sicko with not much going on for her, but they didn't. I think Tumblr user Calico Ann put it best. Despite the fact that she's an android and not human, despite the fact that she seems stuck in a pre-programmed fantasy world, despite the fact that she is the face of a marketing empire, Guinevere herself is not evil. She's everything we were told as kids that princesses are meant to be. Friendly, graceful, wanting to be there for and protect children. She is a princess in need of rescue who tries over and over again to rescue herself while waiting for her knights. She is just as abused under the corrupt system in place, if not more so. Yet she still fights to protect the people who are trying to save her when she is broken. Despite how scathingly and rightfully this show criticizes Disney as a company, it never points the finger at the audience for loving princesses and wanting to indulge in fantasy. And the creativity that brought these fantasies to life were done so out of genuine love. The show actively screams from the high heavens the childlike creativity you once had was not wrong, that your heroes were not wrong, that wanting to share what your heroes taught you was not wrong. Frankie exemplifies what so many of us artists exemplify, the love we feel for the characters that inspired us, and the want to share that love with the people around us. No matter how cruelly society tries to beat it out of us, never forget that it's possible. Making the world a better place is possible. We just have to stop fighting each other, and instead fight the system head on. And that's why I love Knights of Guinevere. So first off, I want to say thank you so much to everyone who had the patience to make it this far into the video. It ended up being so much longer than I ever anticipated it being, and as much as I didn't initially want this to be my first video ever on this channel, I actually end up enjoying the creation process quite a lot, especially towards the end of the video, because it got me to really articulate why I enjoy this show so much, even if it's only one episode long for now. It really has reinvigorated my creative spirit, and what can I say, I think I've fallen in love. It's really unfortunate too, though. Ever since Knights of Guinevere came out, the reception has been thankfully mostly positive. But there's also this growing number of people who think it's quote-unquote refreshing to see people dislike or flat out hate the show just because it's a dissenting opinion. It's what made me feel like I needed to make this video in the first place. I'm not really a huge fan of rewarding contrarianism just for the sake of it being different, especially when that contrarianism just seems to come out of nebulous feelings of a show being too overhyped or too beloved. It just kinda comes off as forced, especially in the video that I just responded to. It genuinely felt like most of it was making up reasons to dislike the show based on preconceived notions about it and its creators. To the point at where it's best, it interprets the show in the most uncharitable way possible, and at worst, misses critical details and misunderstands fundamental aspects of its script. Maybe we all just need to take a step back and reflect how cynical society has made us. How cynical we become to see people getting excited over a well-made indie show and start thinking that it's the product of some artificial sheep mentality. In fact, I very much anticipate some comments accusing me of glazing the show and all of this being some massive cope because I'm a victim of groupthink or whatever. I personally believe I'm pretty good at distinguishing between media that I think is of high quality versus media I enjoy, and I'm proud to say that Knights of Guinevere falls into both categories for me. But I digress. I think we all just need to cool it for a bit instead of immediately jumping to calling everything overhyped. That's not to say that dissenting opinions aren't important in media analysis, but that those dissenting opinions should be able to actually understand the thing that they are criticizing, instead of being based on preconceptions or being predicated on being the first person to say that the coolest thing ever sucks, actually. Look, I get where the feeling is coming from, I really do. I get that people are tired of being yelled at by weirdos online for not vibing with their favorite shows. But at the same time, I don't think that in of itself should be a reason for why you find a show to be bad in the first place. Don't revel in being a buzzkill, it's not good for the soul. Trust me, I would know, I had quite the edgy phase when I was a kid. How about we revel in kindness and understanding? How about we revel in lifting each other up in this cruel world we live in? I think that's what Guinevere would do anyways. Near the completion of the script, I got curious about AJ's other works and found out through her community post that as of the making of this recording, she's unfortunately not doing so hot. Even after everything said in this video, I think it would be nice if we could go send some love and support over her way. Anyways, moving on from that shout out, it's now time to shout out myself. If you like this video, I have more in the works. As I mentioned right now, I'm working on a Knights of Guinevere theory/analysis video essay thing, and while it's still a working title, I plan to call it Knights of Guinevere is About Autonomy. Ooh, cool, right? If you're interested, look forward to that in the future. I also have plans to make an anatomic analysis of Guinevere herself, along with just general Knights of Guinevere content. Look, I'm not saying I'm a Knights of Guinevere YouTuber, but I'm also not saying that. So if you're cogling like me, why not like and subscribe? I'll tip you 10p. Oh, also, I do the art thing on TikTok and Tumblr. I do the thing where I put the drawing in the bag. I do Overwatch art, though recently I have shifted to Knights of Guinevere, but if you're a fan of Overwatch, that's okay too. I still plan on releasing Overwatch art now and then, even if I've changed focus a little. So if you're game, give me a follow. I also have a Ko-Fi if you want to support me and the making of more art and videos. As of right now, my art commissions are officially open. Anyways, without further ado, that'll be all for now, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. I gotta run, but I'll see you on the flip side. Till we meet again, my fellow coglings, fare thee well and Godspeed, my friends.